Welcome to Eye on America. I'm Michelle Miller. Today, we're going to take you from the Mississippi Delta to San Francisco and beyond to introduce you to the helpers and solution seekers moving the needle on some of the nation's most critical issues. We begin with the widening racial wealth gap in the United States. The disparity also plays out when it comes to business ownership. According to the Brookings Institution, 2% of businesses were Black-owned in 2019, even though Black people make up roughly 14% of the U.S. population. Janet Shamblian traveled to the U.S. Mississippi Delta to see how Black community members in the most impoverished state are opening doors to opportunities, one storefront at a time.
Hi, Miss Becky.
It's a dream come true for Kenesha Lewis. Her own smoothie shop, Kay's Cute Fruit, in Greenville, Mississippi. She used to sell them from her apartment.
Oh, we bought this place.
How does that feel?
It's awesome. Like, what? Me? Us? We really bought it? Yeah, we bought it.
Black-owned businesses are a minority in the Mississippi Delta, even with a population in some places more than 70% African American. In a state with the nation's highest poverty rate, almost 20%, in parts of the Delta, it's more than double that.
Majority of the businesses I was seeing sustaining were white-owned, and the math just didn't add up to me. So I figured that there was a resource gap.
Tim Lampkin wanted to close that gap and help business owners like Lewis, who had trouble getting a loan. He saw the region increasingly distressed and the wealth gap growing when he quit a big city job to return to his Delta home.
When you came back here and you realized what was happening, what did you think?
Well, the first thing I thought was, how am I going to be a part of the solution? I never think about things from a deficit mindset. It's always optimistic.
Tim started Higher Purpose to provide mentors and connect lenders to people like nurse practitioner Mary Williams.
It's only half the dose of your first shot.
Okay.
She saw the need for an emergency care center in Clarksdale. The closest was 45 minutes away, but says even with seed money, banks turned her down.
My proposal may be the exact same as my white counterpart's proposal, but yet it doesn't carry the same weight to the lender. Okay, come on.
Higher Purpose introduced her to a lender who made the loan. The clinic has become a lifeline beyond health care.
When you help someone like Dr. Williams, what's the impact on the community?
It's really important that people see themselves in their community. And so this is much bigger than myself or Dr. Williams. It's more about creating a new legacy and generation.
Strawberry bananas.
A generation of business owners reflective of the community they serve.
I mentor young ladies, and to know that they watch me, they're understanding things, they're coming out of their shells with things, that makes my heart healthy because I'm walking in my purpose.
Leveling the playing field after decades of disparity.
See you later. Have a good one.
Outer space is getting messy, paving the way for potential danger to the future of astronomy and exploration. But as Barry Peterson reports, there is an innovative plan to collect and recycle dead satellites and debris, hopefully to turn space junk into treasure.
Here's how it works now. You build things like satellites on Earth and spend millions launching them into orbit. But that's about to change. Recycling is headed for the stars. Dr. Angel Abud-Madrid is director of the Center for Space Resources at the Colorado School of Mines.
Now you can use that to create probably parts of satellites, entire structures in space. You can use it as a propellant.
Today, when satellites run out of fuel, they become just more space debris. Debris that can hit other space objects. With moving gravity, it wiped out an entire space station. But behind this garage door in Boulder, Colorado, Gary Kalnin and Joe Pawelski of Cislunar are using electricity to melt aluminum into these cylinders, a process that needs no oxygen.
Now you can see this is starting to feed down into the rod, and you'll see it. If you look over there, you can see it start to melt.
Their research is funded in part by NASA.
There we go.
Because they will get the aluminum to melt in space by sending their equipment into space. Some companies are already scrambling to use that aluminum as a fuel for satellites. OrbitFab calls it gas stations in space. Others, like Astroscale, are testing ways to collect dead satellites. Recycled debris could mean building what's needed for space in space, even making the structures to colonize the moon and build spaceships to Mars.
If you're going to have humans on the moon, you have oxygen. It's on the rocks. Get it from there. You got water. Water they can use for drinking. Water they can split it into hydrogen and oxygen. If you need to build anything, use the dust and the rocks that are there.
Back in that Colorado garage, Gary Cullinan has the kind of boldness that has powered mankind on every journey that ever mattered. I don't want to be disparaging here, but I have to remind you that we're sitting in a garage in Colorado, and this is your operation.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to imagine that you're going to go from here to someday building a rocket ship on the moon that takes us into the galaxies.
Sure.
But you believe that?
Absolutely.
Ahead, we introduce you to a community of moms releasing their pandemic stresses for all to hear. This is Eye on America. According to a recent CBS News poll, 45% of parents with school-age kids reported feeling frustrated after dealing with issues related to children and the pandemic over the past 2 years. Now, a group of exhausted moms in New Jersey who can relate are finding ways to let off a little steam. Meg Oliver shows us how.
Hi, nice to meet you.
On a bitter cold Sunday morning, just outside New York City, a group of women, all moms, many strangers, gathered for their very first group scream. Jessica Klein organized a mom's screaming event in her community, an opportunity for parents to come together to vent. 2 years of a pandemic burdened with the stresses of childcare, school disruptions, and new variants have left many parents drained. Jessica says over the last 2 years, she's often felt overwhelmed and isolated. When the pandemic started, she had 3 under 6.
My house felt narrow. I felt like the walls were caving in on me, and I just felt like there was no place to go.
And you had a 6-month-old on your hip.
I had a 6-month-old on my hip. I had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old who was in kindergarten. So nobody was in school, and keeping them entertained throughout the day and while changing diapers and nursing was insane.
Nearly 40% of moms responding to a recent survey reported they are experiencing a negative impact on their physical and mental health, and many working moms said it's difficult to balance their children and jobs. Around half had to leave or downshift their careers during the pandemic. As the women gathered on this day, pent-up emotions poured out.
I feel really guilty, and I don't know the right thing to do a lot of the time. I just work and my daughter. I have no time for me. I am grateful for this opportunity, but even though it is a very unique opportunity, it doesn't take away from how lonely it could be.
Damn, I feel like I work so hard all the time and I'm not getting anywhere.
Finally, the time had come to let it out.
3, 2, 1.
I joined in for round 2.
You need to do it again? I do.
After you let out the first scream, how did it feel?
It was just such a sense of relief, and also to be away from my kids for a little while. I love them dearly, and I want them to know that. But it is nice to just be able to go and be in a community of moms.
It's safe, it offers relief, and now these very tired and very overwhelmed parents know they're not alone.
Psychologist Lisa D'Amour is a CBS News contributor. She says these screaming events can be a healthy way to express and release emotion.
February is always a hard time of year in family life. It's the armpit of the school year. Under normal conditions, this is a hard time of year. These conditions plus 2 years of a pandemic is extraordinarily difficult.
Jessica hopes this is just the beginning of mom gatherings in her community.
What are you hoping these moms walked away with today?
I hope that moms walked away with a sense of self-care, even if it's just for a little bit, and a positive memory that they can bring with them after this entire chaos.
J-Mo, come here.
The transition from military to civilian life can be challenging for many veterans. But CBS Evening News anchor Nora O'Donnell shows us how one Georgia nonprofit is teaching vets new skills and driving change from the green.
Oh my gosh, bombed it.
Army veteran Mary Catherine Gorlick says right here on the golf course is where she feels at home.
What is it about golf that you think is therapy?
You can be broken and still play.
Broken physically and mentally from 8 years in the Army.
It doesn't look like anything is wrong per se. It's invisible disabilities that people don't understand.
Invisible disabilities.
Absolutely.
Something not always understood in the civilian world. But at Operation Double Eagle, your disability doesn't matter, and your service dog is welcome. It's a job training program in Georgia where vets learn golf course maintenance and management.
A lot of us are disabled, and we have our little quirks on what we can do and what we can't. And there's no judgment there. It's like, oh, okay, hold on, back spasming, need a break. And there's no issue. They understand.
Matt Weber understands. The Army vet was homeless before he joined the course.
Finally found something I'm decent at and I enjoy, and vets looking out for vets. There's nothing really better than that.
After the 9-week program, Operation Double Eagle will help find jobs for those who want to work on a golf course.
What's your favorite part of the program?
I love the mowing.
The mowing.
Gorlick plans to start her own business and hire other vets.
Get up there. Oh, beautiful.
I mean, come on. What's it done for your mental health, for your state of being?
I'm outside. I'm surrounded by other veterans, so I have that camaraderie that means so much to veterans.
And when we return, snakes on a plane? Well, not exactly. We show you how the San Francisco International Airport is guarding an endangered species. You're watching Eye on America. The San Francisco International Airport is crawling with snakes, and that's a good thing. A thriving population of endangered garter snakes are finding refuge on wetlands owned by the airport. We sought out these elusive creatures to see how they found a happy home. San Francisco International Airport may seem to be an unlikely place to protect an endangered species, but in a grassy area flanked by runways, Natalie Reeder spends her days combing through brush to make sure nature is on track to thrive.
Yeah, cool. Oh, here's one you can see on the leaf here.
The little frog is actually a key part of the food chain that keeps a rare garter snake alive.
The snakes are just a native species. This is one of the few places left on the San Francisco Peninsula where they can survive. So it's the airport's responsibility to take care of the population and the habitat where they live.
Long before she was required by federal law to wear a mask on airport property, Reeder, San Francisco International's biologist in residence, was trying to save the garter snakes from extinction. The garter snake's bright blue, orange, and black markings are considered among the most beautiful in the world.
I like snakes, I think, because they're the ultimate underdog, and everybody hates them. So, you know, they're just a really interesting animal that is misunderstood. So I think that drives me to want to protect them because they don't have a lot of advocates.
The unsuspecting travelers who get on and off 1,300 flights here a day would surely be surprised to learn of the lengths the Airport Commission has gone to accommodate snakes. For starters, 180 acres have been set aside and fenced in just for them.
Well, you think about airport lands, they would typically always be developed for airport operations, for airplanes, for terminals, hotels, whereas here we are intentionally leaving this land in its most natural state and actually doing things to avoid erosion, to avoid flooding of waters.
Doug Yakel is the airport spokesman.
We actually need to cut that grass down to reduce the fire risk. Rather than bringing in heavy machinery, we actually hire a team of goats that come onto the land for 2 weeks and essentially eat up all the grass to avoid the fire hazard. So it's just another example of how a very modern high-tech airport is using some very low-tech solutions to preserve this space.
And San Francisco's airport is not the only one in the rare species protection business. In Oregon, Portland's airport is caring for the federally threatened streak-horned lark. Not to be outdone, LAX has the federally protected El Segundo blue butterfly. And to welcome travelers to the Big Apple, JFK has the diamondback terrapins, which are slowing the pace in a city that never sleeps.
People get into the mindset that you have to go to nature, but this place really shows just how much nature is all around us, and that even a property that looks kind of dumpy can have a really rare endangered species doing well on it.
This year, San Francisco Airport's efforts achieved a milestone. The U.S. Geological Survey and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service report a resurgence in the airport's garter snakes, making it the world's largest population of the rare snakes in a place that otherwise would have been paved over. And finally, we close out the show today with an art movement that's raising awareness about the nation's gun violence issue. More than 45,000 people died from firearm injuries in 2020. That's at least 120 people per day. Last fall, we visited an exhibit at the National Mall in Washington that aims to honor the victims of gunfire and spoke with the creators who continue to find healing after losing loved ones.
My name is Leslie Lee. I am the founder and director of the Soul Box Project. The Soul Box Project is something that I started right after the Las Vegas shooting.
A gunman fired hundreds of shots into the outdoor crowd at an outdoor concert.
58 people were killed. I was horrified by the event. The numbers were so huge. I was just thinking, our brains are not wired to absorb numbers like that. And as an artist, I felt like it was important that there be a visual. The origami boxes were just the first thing that came to mind. Each one of them is going to represent a victim of gunfire. They needed to be something that anybody could make.
This is what you call a soul box. We're doing this for JC. My name is Giselle Merck, and I am the mother of JC Webster, who was murdered July of 2017 due to gun violence. JC, when he was born, his hair came in on the top of his head like the sign of a cross. It also looked like he had a mohawk, and he just beautiful, you know. JC's a kidder. He's a joker. He always wanted to make people smile, to make people laugh. He just gives you this hug, and it's a squeeze, and then he just lifts you up, and he'll put you down. You know, I miss his hugs. I miss his hugs. This was back home in the islands.
Yeah.
The detective and the hospital doctor came in, told me JC didn't make it. Then I asked, well, may I see my son? And that's when it was told to me that I could not, so I couldn't hug my hugger. This is so nice of Soul Box to do this. The Soul Box, it's healing because while you're making these boxes, you're thinking about your loved one.
We have 200,000 boxes that we have brought to the mall to display, which in total represents about 3 years worth of gunfire deaths and injuries. This is the nation's front yard, and this is where national attention comes.
And they look so young, so innocent.
It's really hard to think about those moms and families.
what they're going through.
I teach and I talk to the kids every day about gun violence. But just seeing this, you know, it brings it home a lot.
My daughter was Allison Parker. She was the journalist who was murdered on live television in 2015. She was 24 years old. She was just starting her life, and it was cut short. Seeing that box, that gives me comfort.
My JC! Oh, my JC, my JC, my JC, my JC!
Art doesn't tell you what to do. This project doesn't say anything about taking away people's guns. What this is about is reaching people's hearts so that they understand that if they have a gun, they need to be responsible with it.
Thank you ever so much. For JC to be represented here, it's healing because we were able to create that box to show, hey, look, JC, his life matters.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News, available across all platforms. I'm Michelle Miller. Thanks for joining us for Eye on America.